The Supreme Court has delivered a landmark 6-3 decision, striking down Hawaii's restrictive law and expanding where licensed individuals can carry firearms. The majority opinion declares that the right to bear arms for self-defense extends into public-facing spaces, not just the home. This ruling challenges the foundation of many state and local gun laws, forcing legislatures nationwide to reconsider their approach. Gun rights advocates hail this as a historic victory, while opponents warn it will trigger a wave of legal challenges and reshape public safety debates. The court's decision draws a new line in the sand, setting the stage for years of legal and political battles over gun rights in America. The Supreme Court's decision centered on Hawaii's 2023 law, which banned firearms on private property open to the public unless owners posted signs allowing them. Gun owners argued this created a de facto ban, making permits meaningless and violating the Second Amendment. Hawaii defended the law as a way to empower property owners and protect public safety, not as an outright ban. The law also designated certain sensitive places as gun-free zones, but the ruling now puts those restrictions under scrutiny. At its core, the case asked whether states can preemptively declare all private commercial spaces off-limits to guns, a question the court answered with a decisive no. The Supreme Court heard sharply contrasting arguments reflecting America's deep divide over gun rights. Plaintiffs argued the law made self-defense impossible in daily life and had no historical precedent, citing the Second Amendment's protection beyond the home. They claimed Hawaii's law was a modern invention designed to sidestep court precedent. Hawaii, backed by gun control advocates, countered that the law balanced public safety with property rights and fit within a tradition of regulating firearms in populated areas. The state cited colonial and 19th century laws restricting weapons in towns as evidence for such limits. The case became a clash of historical narratives, with the court ultimately siding with a broader interpretation of gun rights. The story of this decision begins with the Supreme Court's landmark 2022 Bruin ruling, a case that dramatically reshaped the legal landscape for gun rights across the United States. In Bruin, the court struck down New York's strict concealed carry law, which had required residents to show proper cause to carry a handgun in public. This decision set a powerful new standard for evaluating gun regulations nationwide. The court declared that any gun law must be consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation, not just based on modern policy arguments or public safety concerns. This made it significantly more difficult for states to justify new or existing restrictions on carrying firearms, especially those that lacked clear historical precedent. In the wake of Bruin, states like Hawaii quickly responded by passing new laws that attempted to limit where guns could be carried, hoping to comply with the new standard while still protecting public safety. These laws focused on banning firearms from private property without explicit permission and from so-called sensitive places, like schools, government buildings, and certain public venues. However, these new restrictions were met with immediate legal challenges from gun rights advocates, who argued that they still violated the Second Amendment under the Bruin framework. Hawaii's case quickly rose to prominence, becoming the first major test of how far the Bruin decision would reach and what kinds of restrictions might still be allowed. The Supreme Court was asked to clarify whether Hawaii's approach, restricting guns in many public and private spaces, fit within the new historical standards set by Bruin. By ultimately striking down Hawaii's law, the court sent a clear message. It intends to strictly enforce the Bruin precedent, requiring states to closely adhere to historical practices when regulating firearms. As a result, broad public carry restrictions are now much harder to defend in court, signaling a new era for gun laws across the country. The fight over Hawaii's new gun law began almost immediately after it was signed into law. Gun owners, concerned about what they saw as an infringement on their constitutional rights, quickly filed a lawsuit in federal court, challenging the law's validity. The case drew attention from both local residents and national advocacy groups, who saw it as a potential turning point in the ongoing debate over gun regulations in America. After a lengthy legal battle, the plaintiffs lost in both the District Court and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Both courts upheld Hawaii's law, finding it to be a reasonable regulation under current legal standards. Unwilling to accept defeat, The plaintiffs decided to take their fight to the highest court in the land, appealing to the United States Supreme Court for a final decision. The Ninth Circuit's ruling did more than just affect Hawaii. It deepened a growing split among federal courts across the country, as other circuit courts had reached different conclusions on similar gun laws. This inconsistency created confusion and uncertainty about what the law actually required, making it clear that a definitive answer was needed. This division among the courts prompted the Supreme Court to step in and agree to hear the case. The justices recognized that the issue had national significance, with the potential to impact gun laws and constitutional rights in every state. The plaintiffs argued that the lower courts had misinterpreted the Supreme Court's earlier Bruin decision, which set important standards for evaluating gun laws. They insisted that the Supreme Court needed to step in to protect the Second Amendment from being gradually eroded by state and local regulations. By agreeing to hear the case, the Supreme Court signaled its intent to resolve the legal uncertainty once and for all. The nation now awaited a ruling that could set a new, nationwide standard for gun laws and constitutional rights, shaping the future of the Second Amendment for years to come. The Supreme Court's landmark decision sends shockwaves across the nation, immediately invalidating similar gun control laws in states like New York and California. The ruling's impact is both swift and far-reaching, touching the lives of millions and reshaping the legal landscape overnight. Lawmakers in these states are now forced to urgently rewrite or repeal their long-standing restrictions, scrambling to respond to the new legal reality and searching for ways to maintain public safety within the bounds of the court's decision. As a result, the number of public places where licensed gun owners can legally carry firearms is set to expand dramatically, raising questions about how communities will adapt to this sudden change. This sweeping shift is welcomed by some as a victory for Second Amendment rights, while others fear it could lead to increased risks and uncertainty in everyday life, highlighting deep divisions in public opinion. The Department of Justice wasted no time in voicing strong opposition to the ruling, holding press conferences and issuing statements that underscore their concerns. DOJ officials warned that the decision could undermine both public safety and property rights, potentially making it harder for law enforcement to keep communities secure and for property owners to control their spaces. In response, the DOJ is now actively advising state governments on how to craft narrower, more targeted regulations that can withstand legal scrutiny while still protecting residents. At the same time, federal attorneys are preparing to defend existing federal gun laws from a likely wave of new legal challenges, signaling a prolonged legal battle ahead. For business owners, the burden of decision now shifts to them. They must post clear signs if they wish to prohibit firearms on their property, making their stance known to customers and the public. This effectively privatizes the gun debate, turning it into a matter of individual business policy rather than a uniform state law, and sparking new conversations within communities. Decisions about where guns are allowed are now moving from state legislatures to the hands of private citizens and business owners, creating a patchwork of policies that vary from place to place. The Supreme Court's ruling sets the stage for a new era of legal and political conflict as Americans debate and contest where guns should be permitted in public life, ensuring that the conversation around gun rights and regulations will remain at the forefront of national attention for years to come. This decision highlights the Supreme Court's conservative majority and its originalist approach to the Constitution. The 6-3 split was predictable, with conservatives reinforcing the history and tradition test for gun laws. The ruling cements the court's legacy as the most pro-gun rights in modern history, fundamentally altering decades of legal precedent. In dissent, the liberal justices warned the decision would lead to more guns in public and greater risks of violence. They argued for a more flexible approach, allowing states to address modern safety challenges. Looking ahead, the court's direction suggests future challenges to bans on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines may succeed. For now, the conservative majority's interpretation of the Second Amendment will shape America's gun laws for years to come.